So, Anthony, your new book focuses on the failings on both sides of the political aisle. Do you think the Democrats right now are good enough at recognizing their own failings, or are they spending so much time and energy being outraged by Trump and really just blaming him?
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I told Martin Wolf at the FT that the person that controls the Democratic Party is Donald J. Trump. And if you just look at it from the way I look at it, he triggers them, he has splintered them, he understands the culture war better than they do, and they respond to him in a very poor way. And so the Graham Plattner would be an example of that in Maine. They've got the super flawed candidate that they think is a MAGA light, but progressive socialist, that sort of thing. And they're going too far to the left for the American people. And when I go on these left-leaning political punditry shows, they explain to me that they just aren't further to the left enough. They're searching for a purer form of socialism or a purer form of communism. It's just not going to work in this country. So if they head in that direction, I predict they'll lose the 2028 presidential election. I mean, they're going to likely win the House in the midterms. I think it'll be a toss-up in the Senate, but more than likely they'll lose the Senate. But yes, Trump has driven them crazy. I mean, by the way, he's driving all of us crazy. I mean, he's terrible for everything but the podcast business, apparently, but he's just driving everybody crazy. But them in particular, he's got them completely nuts.
Now, the title of your book, Anthony, is All the Wrong Moves: How Three Catastrophic Decisions and Years of a Word I Can't Say on the Radio Politics Led to Trump. What
Yeah.
were, briefly, those three catastrophic decisions?
Well, I don't think I think the uniqueness of the book is that no one's really linked these decisions, but I think when you see them, there are three very big dominoes that led to the rise of populism. So the first one, obviously, is the World Trade Organization introduction of the Chinese. This is something President Clinton wanted to do. It was contentious at the time, which I write about. They come in as an emerging market, so they're unfettered in terms of their ability to protect their markets and to send their goods to the West, including the UK, unfettered. The second big thing for the United States is we go to war with a tax cut. Bush cuts taxes in March of 2001. We're at war in October because of 9/11. Two devastating, protracted wars with a tax cut sends the deficit to the moon. And then the third thing is when we had the bailout, which I'll give plaudits and credit to Prime Minister Gordon Brown for coming up with the TARP idea. We used that idea. We actually imported from the United Kingdom, but we give all the money to the banks. We give no money to the lower middle income people, no mortgage relief, no credit card relief, no rent relief. And this causes a tremendous amount of anger in the country. And here we are 18 or so years out from that last big mistake, and we're in a full-on K economy where maybe a third of the country is doing well, two-thirds of the country feels left out or economically desperational. And so I write in the book what happened, how it happened, and it's sort of a money point of view of history as opposed to just politics. If you follow the money in the United States, where the money has always been very important in this country, if you follow the money, you can see where we've gone to get ourselves into the current trap that we're in. And then, of course, I write a little bit about how we can take ourselves out of this if we can, end a little bit of the tribalism. We would have to end something called Citizens United, and we'd also have to figure out a way to make the gerrymandering a little bit fair.
I think it's really interesting, the money point of view of history. I mean, it isn't an often taken position. Do you think that's because people find it uncomfortable to take it from a
Yeah,
money perspective?
exactly right. I mean, I would say that's true on both sides of the Atlantic. It's
Mm.
the U.S. finds it uncomfortable. I think the Brits find it uncomfortable. But I think it's an unfortunate fact. Calvin Coolidge once said that the business of America is business, and I think you have to understand that about America. And I think what we have found, and I write about this in the book, when you have a distribution of economic rent, that would be the profits coming out of the companies, large and small. When it's fair between capital and labor, you have a pretty healthy society. But when it gets overly skewed towards capital and labor feels left out, and I don't just mean labor like a factory worker, I'm talking about somebody that doesn't own their own business. This could be a white collar person working in a law firm or an accounting firm, or people that don't own the businesses that they're working for. The splits, particularly here in the U.S., have gone up about 25% towards capital away from labor. And I think that has caused a tremendous amount of economic anxiety in the country. And when you get that anxiety, you get anger and you get the rise of people like Donald Trump, rise of anger-based populism. And of course, you've heard this before, but I'll share it. You have a horseshoe effect where the left-leaning populists sound very similar to the right-leaning populists on a lot of different strategies because they're trying to attract angry people. And I'll say this to you, and it doesn't really reflect well on me, but I'm happy to share it. When I was working for Donald Trump, which was a mistake of mine, which I have to own the rest of my life, I used to go to Bernie Sanders rallies. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to see who was showing up. It turned out that many of the same people were showing up at Bernie Sanders rallies that showed up at Donald Trump rallies. Moreover, in 2016, Mr. Trump received a lot of the crossover votes from Bernie Sanders, which caused the demise of Secretary Clinton. So it's a complicated thing, but I write about it. I try to let people into a window of a 35-year observation as a Wall Street analyst, a failed White House communications director, but also, a political analyst, assessing this thing not only just from the policies, but what were the economic impacts of those policies, and how is it related to the disposable income of the average American?
It's really interesting you still refer to working for Donald Trump as a mistake, and Anthony, because I've read you talk about two big mistakes in your life: going to work for Donald Trump and investing in Sam Bankman-Fried's firm.
Well,
But
actually, he
what?
he invested in
Well,
my
he
firm.
invested in yours, yes.
Yeah, but
Um,
those are two. But I have a phone book of mistakes. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough time on the radio for me to share with you all my mistakes. But go ahead.
that's a very long podcast.
Right.
Mine too, by the way. Working for Donald Trump, albeit very briefly, did set you on a path to a new career, and you're now a very well respected commentator. Can you still call it a mistake?
Well, it's sweet of you to say, but I don't want to smooth over how painful that was in that period of my life. I don't, Deirdre and I almost ended up in a divorce. Thank God we reconciled our marriage. People don't remember this, but I missed the birth of my son on the 24th of July in 2017. I was with the president in the Boy Scouts camp in West Virginia. That was a very painful period of my life. And so I don't like skimming things over. I feel like if you're going, particularly if you're going to be a political analyst, I think you have to be very honest with yourself and honest with the situation. So I don't want to pretend that it wasn't a mistake. I didn't see the arc of Donald Trump's political career going in this direction. Now, there are people, I'm talking to you from Midtown Manhattan, where my office is. There are people here in Manhattan that would say, oh, well, he was like this the whole way. And I saw a mixed bag in the president. I saw a guy that went to Elton John's wedding. I saw a guy that started out as a Democrat. And I thought at age 69, as he was ascending into the presidency, he would be more transformative and post partisan. And so I got that very wrong. So it would actually be an even bigger mistake for me to pretend that I didn't get it wrong in terms of going in that direction. But you are right. He did, ironically, provide for me a platform where I could advocate for a better America, a platform where I could advocate for a better relationship with our allies, and to get people thinking about the better angels of our nature here in America, as opposed to some of the things that he's doing. So I am glad about that. Remember, to your viewers and listeners, there is a silver lining in life. When you get knocked down, you can have some positive outcomes, and the one you're suggesting is certainly one of those.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you've kind of made failure a part of your brand from how it looks from the
Failing
outside, anyway.
failing upwards. You got to fail upwards. I think that's you got
Yeah,
to tell your kids failing upwards is the key ingredient to being happy.
but it's a very American entrepreneurial kind of approach to failure, that it's a crucial step on the road to success. I mean, do you think that's something that us kind of shame-filled Brits who, gosh, we go and set ourselves on fire over failure. Do you think we could learn something from the American approach to failure?
Well, listen, you have a phenomenal culture as well. I mean, we're different countries, of course. We have slightly different ways we speak English or American, however you want to say it. But I don't want to overly be critical of the Brits because you got
Well, you're very
unbelievable.
much an Anglophile these days,
Well,
Anthony.
listen,
So
yeah, I am, but I mean, the feeling is mutual. I feel like it's reciprocated. I love them, they love me. I mean, it's a mutual affection. But I would just say, relax on yourself. I think the number one thing when you're failing, don't play the victim, be accountable. But the second thing is dust yourself off and recognize that there is a arc of recovery and there's a learning experience that goes with failing. And I think you bring up entrepreneurship. I'm sitting in a firm talking to you that's 21 years old. We've had three or four really big things that have hurt us, but we've always managed to adapt and pull ourselves through over the 21 years that we've been in business here at Skybridge. And I would just tell my friends in your country, you don't have to be shameful. It's okay. In fact, if anything, I find that people respect the authenticity that comes with the accountability. And so that would be my message more than anything else. But I don't want to be too hard on you guys, though.
thank you. There's another new book that's making massive waves this week,
Yeah.
Regime Change by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, the New York Times White House correspondents. And they write that Trump in his second term has become almost entirely housebound. And that the sessions of opinion polls and political chit chat that he spent in his first term really don't happen anymore. That he doesn't even do MAGA rallies anymore. I found an interview with you, Anthony, from May 2024, so 6 months before the last election, in which you predicted a second term by Trump would be a march towards authoritarianism. Do you think we've now reached that destination?
Well, I think the courts have held more or less. If you look at the things they've rejected, like his tariffs, some of the things he's doing around the polling, certainly the ICE situation in Minneapolis, that great tragedy there, I think the system is more or less holding, but it has gone exactly like I predicted. I actually was in the UK earlier this week. I gave a presentation at the Athenaeum Club and I listed the attack on the judges, the attack on the media, the attack on the law firms, and all of the different things he was trying to do to weaken and intimidate the system. And so, yes, I mean, if the system doesn't hold, I predict it will hold. This is a march towards authoritarianism. This is a march towards an expansion of executive power and weakening the other branches of the government. One of the reasons why he didn't sign that housing bill is he wants more control over the federal elections. And so, we've been a country that has been served well by the decentralization of our government and the checks and balances. And the president wants to reverse those things. So yeah, I mean, more or less what I predicted has happened. I also said that he would put J.D. Vance in the wood chipper. I mean, you probably remember the movie Fargo. He's halfway through the wood chipper. JD. He's more or less trying to destroy his career. And if Marco Rubio doesn't leave, Secretary of State Rubio doesn't leave the administration, Trump will clip him as well because he's like this sort of Macbeth figure where he likes coming after people. Or even a King Lear sort of a figure. So I think he's a very dangerous guy. I have spoken out about why I think that, but I think that the country will survive him. And in some ways, the things that he's done over the last 18 months will help us reform the country because he broke a lot of norms and standards for us. And we're probably going to need to codify those things and perhaps even push for a more independent Department of Justice. And so those are things I see as an optimist. But again, I think it's important to speak out about it. I find it amazing to me that I have some very wealthy friends, and we'll even say billionaire friends, that are very afraid of him, and they're on bended knee to him, which is un-American and frankly a very big mistake.
Hmm. The billionaires might still be, kissing the ring, but do you get the sense that America as a whole is finally growing quite sick of him?
I do think that. Look at the polling.
Mm.
He's in the low 30s, so he has sort of Richard Nixon at the depths of Watergate, Herbert Hoover at the lows of the economic depression in the early 1930s. Those are his approval ratings. So he will have that base. His base is angry. As I explained in my book, All the Wrong Moves, the base is angry, and so he represents them. He's an avatar for their anger. But I also point out in the book, he's offered no policy solutions to help them. Disposable income has gone down, deficit spending has gone up. The big, beautiful spending bill, he gave tax cuts to the wealthy, and yet he cut food programs here in this country, and he's taking about 17 million people off of the healthcare system. So the great irony here is the people that have voted for him and have offered him this support, he's actually hurt the most. And so, but they stay with him because he's angry and they're angry. And what we've learned, there's a lot of support for the politics of anger right now, and perhaps that's true in your country too. And I hope that the hard lessons that we're getting here hopefully send a signal to your country that to stay with the system, however flawed your system is, try not to overly break it.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. We do have a lot of angry people here, and interestingly, just going back to what you're saying before about how people can sort of the horseshoe effect. People can come from the right and the left and sort of almost end up in the same place. But also, those votes can shift quite easily. I mean, as you will know, we will have a freshly minted new prime minister in possibly just about 3 weeks, and it's probably going to be Andy Burnham.
Hmm.
Trump admitted this week that he doesn't really know an awful lot about Andy Burnham, other than he is extremely liberal. I mean, what advice would you give our incoming prime minister on dealing with Trump at this point in Trump's second term?
Well, I mean, I would tell him what I tell every European leader: pick up the phone and call Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, make him your life coach for a few days, and because Mark handles Trump better than anybody. And I would observe Mark Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands and now the overseer of NATO, and do the opposite of him. So focus on what Mark Carney does and do the opposite of Mark Rutte. Those would be my recommendations to your new prime minister.
Do you think it matters for our new prime minister how he handles Trump at this point? I mean, Trump's only got 2 years left. He can't stand again. We don't think. And as you said, America's finally growing sick of him, and he seems to be increasingly isolated on the international stage.
I think it matters to the pride of the country, and it will matter to the prime minister's popularity. I think that if you look at Carney's standing in Canada, or if you look at Maloney's standing in Italy, I think standing up to Donald Trump sends a message to the citizens that the prime minister will be representing that he has a backbone. And I certainly hope. Perhaps he even listens to your show. I hope he listens to what I'm saying and has a stiff spine. Call Carney. He'll give you the best. And by the way, the harder you are with Trump, the more respect he has for you. People think, oh, he likes the sycophants. He actually finds it revolting. You mentioned Maggie and Jonathan's book. If you go into regime change, he actually laughs at the people that are self-flagellating, and he's showing text messages of Mark Zuckerberg to Elon Musk with great laughter and derision. And he respects the people more that stand up to him. And I think that's something the prime minister would need to know.
Mm. Now, you mentioned spending some time in the UK recently, Anthony. And I know, and I'm not giving any spoilers here because it has been announced, but you've just been filming a new drama, War Game for Sky, which will be on TV
Yeah.
later this year. Now,
Yeah.
you're playing the US Secretary of State with a national government for the UK, with Michael
Yes.
Gove as Prime Minister and Nicola Sturgeon as the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, of
Yeah.
course, we're not going to give any spoilers, but how did you rate their performance in a crisis?
Well, I thought they were terrific. I really enjoyed the show, and there was a lot of improvisation. So there was a little bit of a idea about what we were doing, and then there was improvisation in terms of the dialogue. I mean, as you probably know, I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. I had to go to confession after my acting rendition because I was channeling the great hypocrite Marco Rubio, and I was spouting off America First isms and Marco Rubio isms, and so I felt quite soiled doing that, frankly. So, I mean, I was definitely out of my character trying to channel something that a Rubio sycophant to Donald Trump would be saying to your government. So I hope when people watch it, they realize it's an act. That's not where my philosophy lives or my principles.
I think we can definitely suspend our disbelief for a few episodes at least. Did
But
you
it was a
enjoy?
lot of fun to do. I recommend the show. It was really a lot of fun. The dialogue is great.
Did it give you a bit of a taste for office? Would you ever consider standing or running?
Well, I mean, listen, and I've said this as a joke. You maybe have heard it. I'm running for re-election in my marriage. I mean, we had a rough time in my marriage last time I was in politics. I don't want to hurt my wife or my family by doing something like that. But I'm not going to completely close my mind to it either because There's a lot of problems in the country, so we'll see. You know, the straight up answer is I don't really have a lane to run in right now. I can't run in the Republican Party. The MAGA lane is sort of taken up by those guys, and I'm not a populist. I certainly can't run in the Democratic Party because those guys would be very sore at me for supporting Donald Trump. So independents can't win here, at least for right now. We'll see. You know, I want to get these ideas out in the book that I'm publishing. Again, All the Wrong Moves, and let's see if those ideas are well received, and if they are, I'll keep an open mind.
Before I let you go, Anthony, it is the eve of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You're an optimist. What do
Yeah.
you think the US will look like in another 250 years?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm a big believer in the U.S. I think the decentralization of the government will keep the U.S. going. It's obviously the longest standing government right now, if you measure governments. To put it the way your king did, King Charles, he said 250 years, or as we say here in England, just the other day. I thought that was great. So, I mean, 250 years from now will likely be just the other day. There'll be a transformation in technology. Hopefully, there'll be a continued wave of immigration and intellectual capital into the country that will constantly create this entrepreneurial culture. But I'll say something to you guys that you should think about because the country's very young. And King Charles said this himself. And I always tell people we have a great pop culture, but we don't have a long-standing culture in this country the way you do in the UK or France or, even Italy dates back to the Roman Empire. So what happens to us is we lose our institutional living memory, we dunk ourselves. And I'll just give you three quick examples. The Revolutionary War, 80 years later, we have the Great Civil War. We can't resolve the slavery without going into warfare. We can't end it diplomatically or through the Constitution. 80 years after that, we have the Great Depression, which is the precursor for the Second World War. And unfortunately, we're 80 years out again from that war, where we really did build an architecture of peace and prosperity for the West and for ourselves. And so now we're going to do what Americans do. There's a moment of reflection, potential renewal, and then hopefully what I would like to see is a renaissance for America. We've done it before, and we've done it in worse situations. The Depression and the Civil War are worse than the situation that we're dealing with right now. So I'm extremely optimistic that we've got a load of smart people here in this country that can recognize the direction we've gone in over the last couple of years is not the right one. And maybe Andy Burnham, is that his name? Maybe he'll figure that out for you guys as well.
Fingers crossed.